What happens when two allies, the US and Canada, turn on each other in a bitter trade war? Well, it's not just a diplomatic spat. It's shaking the foundations of global economies, causing skyrocketing costs and threatening entire industries. But how far will this tension go? The US-Canada trade war has escalated from a few tariffs to a full-blown conflict, and it's not just the countries involved that are suffering. Alaska's economy is on the brink, energy supplies are at risk, and industries worldwide are feeling the heat. In today's video, we'll uncover the latest developments in this economic battle, how it's tearing apart vital trade relationships, and why it's threatening more than just the price of your groceries. We'll dig into the high-stakes consequences and show you why this trade war could change everything. Stay tuned to see how this trade war could impact you, and make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the latest updates on this global crisis. In March 2025, former US President Donald Trump signed an executive order that imposed a hefty 25% tariff on a wide range of imported goods from Canada, including steel, aluminum, and industrial products. The primary reason given? To protect US industries from what the administration viewed as unfair competition, alongside addressing ongoing drug smuggling issues along the northern border. But this wasn't just a matter of trade politics. It was a pivotal move with severe economic ramifications. This tariff act opened the door to what has now escalated into a full-blown economic conflict with global consequences. Let's take a closer look at how these tariffs could impact not just the US, but also Canada, Alaska, and the global economy. Canada's response to these tariffs was immediate and firm. On March 13, 2025, Canada announced a reciprocal tariff of 25% on $29.8 billion worth of U.S. imports. A wide range of U.S. goods would be affected, including everything from household goods and cosmetics to fruit juice and wine. This wasn't just a federal move. Canadian provinces like British Columbia, Ontario, and Quebec also began to roll out their own measures in retaliation. One of the most notable actions came from British Columbia, which introduced a bold retaliatory measure that would impose a tax on U.S. commercial trucks passing through the province to reach Alaska. This strategy specifically targeted the crucial transportation routes that supply goods to Alaska. Now, why does this matter? Well, Alaska's economy heavily depends on trade routes passing through Canada. 80% of all goods transported from the U.S. to Alaska travel along the Alaska Highway, which runs through British Columbia and Yukon. Any disruption in these routes would increase shipping costs, which could have a devastating impact on the cost of goods in Alaska. This is particularly concerning for essential goods, like fresh vegetables, meat, milk, and other everyday items, which would see prices soar. In Alaska's more remote areas, road deliveries are critical, and a significant rise in transportation costs would directly affect the population's standard of living. It doesn't stop at goods. Alaska's tourism industry, a crucial economic sector, also stands to lose. Most cruise ships traveling to Alaska must stop at Canadian ports before continuing their journey to the state. With heightened tariffs and strained trade relations, the entire travel infrastructure is threatened, potentially raising costs for tourists and discouraging them from visiting the state. This could have a knock-on effect on Alaskan businesses that rely on tourism, such as hotels, tour guides, and local attractions. Alaska could face an economic crisis if this conflict continues without resolution, leading to major disruptions across multiple industries. As the trade war with Canada deepens, the global response has been swift and strong. The European Union and Canada have made it clear that they will not back down. The EU, in particular, has unveiled a retaliatory tariff package worth 26 billion euros. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen emphasized that tariffs are burdensome for both businesses and consumers, and Europe intends to defend its interests aggressively. Canada has similarly pledged to take strong action, signaling it will protect its economy from U.S. pressure. This response is not just economic, but symbolic of the growing global resistance against unilateral tariff strategies that undermine international trade relationships. Amid the chaos caused by the tariffs, former President Trump's actions have sparked further controversy. While the stock market plunged over 890 points in a single day, and business leaders were calling for clarity on the economy, Trump shifted focus to a PR event promoting Tesla. Instead of addressing the economic crisis, Trump took to social media to praise Elon Musk, calling him a great patriot. This move raised eyebrows, especially when investors were in panic mode and businesses were seeking guidance on how to weather the storm. Was this a deliberate distraction to divert attention from the real issues at hand, or just an attempt to shift the narrative? Whatever the case, the global community had already made it clear that the trade war was not something they were willing to accept. One of the most critical aspects of the U.S.-Canada relationship is energy trade. The U.S. imports over 4.3 million barrels of oil from Canada every day, accounting for 60% of all U.S. oil imports. This trade is not just a routine exchange. It's vital for U.S. refineries, particularly those in the Midwest, which are designed to process Canadian heavy crude oil. However, as tensions escalate, Canada is threatening to cut oil exports, which could send gas prices soaring and potentially cause a supply chain crisis. U.S. refineries are ill-equipped to process oil from other regions like the Middle East or South America, which means the U.S. could face skyrocketing gas prices and severe economic disruptions if Canada follows through on its threat. The long-term consequences of these escalating tariffs are significant, not just for the U.S. and Canada, but for the world. As Canada seeks new trade partners, notably in Europe and Asia, the U.S. risks being left behind. In fact, China has already stepped in to buy more Canadian oil, increasing its energy reliance on Canada instead of the U.S. Canada's shift toward energy independence could potentially make it less reliant on the U.S., which would further undermine America's global standing. If the U.S. continues to isolate itself with protectionist policies, it may not just lose economic dominance in energy, but also in technology, agriculture, and other key sectors. But the economic crisis isn't just about trade. The growing sense of instability within the U.S. is driving away some of its most talented professionals. According to recent reports, there has been a record surge in American citizens seeking to leave the country. People aren't just fleeing because of political dissatisfaction. Many are skilled professionals, including scientists, engineers, and doctors, who no longer feel safe or valued in the U.S. Countries like Canada, Germany, and Ireland are seeing a 50% increase in U.S. passport applications as people look for better opportunities abroad. This brain drain could have severe consequences for the U.S. economy. The departure of skilled workers in fields like technology, healthcare, and scientific research could cripple innovation and economic growth. So where does this leave the U.S.? With tariffs isolating the country from its allies and global markets, and a growing brain drain undermining critical sectors, the future looks uncertain. The U.S. is facing major financial and economic challenges, with shrinking consumer demand and declining investment. What happens next? The U.S. could face long-term economic decline if these protectionist policies continue. At a time when global trade is more interconnected than ever, the isolationist approach may prove to be more damaging than beneficial. Whether the U.S. can shift its strategy before it's too late remains to be seen. As we've seen, the U.S.-Canada trade war has far-reaching consequences. It's not just about tariffs. It's about energy, trade routes, and the potential for an economic collapse in the U.S. if the situation isn't addressed. While Trump's administration continues to stand by its policies, the global pushback is undeniable. Europe, Canada, and even China are making moves that could reshape the future of international trade and the U.S. economy. The stakes are high. As this crisis unfolds, it will be crucial for the U.S. government to reconsider its approach to tariffs and international relations. If they fail to act, the consequences for American consumers and businesses could be severe. Stay tuned for future updates on this ongoing trade war and its impact on global markets.
From Canada to U.S. refineries.
Thanks for watching.
Source: U.S. Energy Information Administration, 2020. For the U.S., this steady supply of affordable Canadian oil is a key component of its energy security. Canada is the U.S.'s largest foreign oil supplier, which makes the potential disruption of this flow extremely impactful. But there's a growing crisis on the horizon. Canada has been hinting at the possibility of cutting back on oil exports in retaliation for rising U.S. tariffs. If Canada were to reduce or even suspend these oil exports, the U.S. would face a massive energy crisis. Gasoline prices would shoot up, and industries that depend on oil, like manufacturing, transportation, and even agriculture, would find themselves scrambling for more expensive alternatives. Even a temporary disruption could send shockwaves throughout the global oil market, pushing up prices not just in North America, but worldwide. The U.S. economy could experience everything from higher fuel costs to soaring manufacturing expenses. And in turn, consumer prices would rise. All of this could compound the growing trade tensions between the U.S. and Canada, leading to a volatile energy market with potentially lasting consequences. The U.S. Energy Information Administration, EIA, reported in 2020 that even a temporary disruption in Canadian oil imports could push gasoline prices up by 10 to 15%, potentially increasing operating costs for industries and affecting the price of everyday consumer goods. Section 3. The escalating trade war. Now, let's take a step back and look at the bigger picture. This is not just about electricity or oil. This is part of a much larger trade conflict between the U.S. and Canada. The U.S. trade war with Canada has been escalating for years, fueled by the America First policies that seek to prioritize domestic production over international trade. The U.S. has already imposed sweeping tariffs on goods like steel, aluminum, and consumer products, creating a lot of tension with its neighbor to the north. In response, Canada has retaliated, imposing its own tariffs and proposing restrictions on key exports like oil, electricity, and rare earth metals, all of which are crucial to the U.S. economy. In fact, Canada is home to one of the largest reserves of rare earth elements like lithium, cobalt, and nickel, which are essential for the production of electric vehicles and advanced electronics. If Canada were to restrict these exports, it could disrupt the green tech sector and the automotive industry, especially as the world transitions to electric vehicles. And this is where things get interesting. Canada's export restrictions aren't just about economics, they are also about political power. By holding back critical resources like oil, electricity, and metal, Canada is using its position as an energy powerhouse to influence U.S. decision-making. This ongoing trade war has far-reaching implications. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, estimated that global trade conflicts could cost the global economy up to $7.4 trillion in global economic output. These figures underscore just how significant the broader economic impact could be if the U.S.-Canada trade war continues to escalate. The big question here is, how far will both countries go in these tariff battles? If these tensions continue to escalate, the effects will extend well beyond trade and into the very fabric of the North American economy. In the automotive industry alone, higher production costs, delays in supply chains, and price hikes could all come into play. Section 4. Interwoven economies and the hidden risks. Let's explore something crucial here: the interwoven economies of the U.S. and Canada. These two nations are tightly connected through energy trade and the flow of raw materials. It's not just about oil and electricity, it's also about vital minerals like lithium, nickel, and cobalt, which are critical for the automotive industry and the tech sector. According to the U.S. Trade Representative, trade between the two countries was valued at $762.1 billion in 2024, making Canada the U.S.'s largest trading partner. Energy exports alone make up a significant portion of this trade, with Canada supplying 60% of U.S. crude oil imports. Consider this: Canada's energy products are worth billions of dollars to the U.S. economy. In 2024, the U.S. was importing billions of dollars in Canadian energy products. Underscoring the importance of this relationship, American industries simply cannot function without these imports. For example, automotive manufacturing relies heavily on Canadian raw materials and energy to keep production lines running smoothly. But there's a catch: this deep interdependence also creates vulnerabilities. If the political situation takes a turn for the worse and Canada decides to restrict exports, the U.S. economy could face severe disruptions. Manufacturing costs would rise, which would translate into higher consumer prices. Global competitiveness could be lost if production costs rise too much, making North American products less attractive on the world stage. This complex economic relationship makes the current trade dispute even more precarious. A disruption in the flow of energy or materials could trigger widespread price hikes. Delays.